Hello, my name is Laurie Rubin, and I am very excited to be able to share with you some of my favorite tips for taking great photos at the zoo. Everyone shoots photos at the zoo, whether it's with your smartphone or you've got a point and shoot, your DSLR, a mirrorless camera. Um, when we go, we love to capture those wonderful moments that we see with all these wonderful animals. So let me share with you my very first favorite tip, and that is get there early or stay later. First of all, when you get to the gates, first thing, right before they open up, you get to the front of the line. And there are a lot less crowds. And I don't know about you, but I've seen so many times around noontime when it's bright and sunny and the animals aren't so active, there are more tourists and more visitors that come into the zoos and parks right in the middle of the afternoon. So there's several reasons why I like to get there early and why I like to stay later. Of course, number one, there's less crowds and the animals tend to be more active. So they're active in the morning and then they tend to be more active later in the day. In the middle of the afternoon, they're napping. So our photo opportunities just aren't as exciting as when they're moving and we can capture, wonderful behavior and gestures. Plus, a big thing is that the light is better. I love looking out in the mornings. First thing, I look out my window and there's some overcast. That's nature's diffuser. That is just the perfect time to go photograph animals. And the reason why is you don't get so many blown out highlights and those deep shadows. You get this nice tone, the beautiful tones throughout your image, and the colors are saturated and they look just gorgeous. And, sometimes we can get those wonderful shafts of light too. So I love it when there's clouds. I can kind of play with the light, and I love it when it's overcast. So those are the times where you want to get out. In fact, another tip is that if it's drizzling or if it's a little bit damp outside, you get the most wonderful saturated colors, and the animals love it. The birds are preening and they become much more playful and active. So oftentimes, instead of staying home when you see there's a little bit of drizzle outside, that's the time you want to go to the zoo. As long as you protect your camera, you should be good to go. Okay, a little bonus tip for everyone is check for feeding times and special presentations. This way you can get some nice close-ups of animals that are on the keeper's, hands or arms. If they're holding them up, you can get a nice portrait. So be sure to check for those. And feeding times is when the animals tend to be most active. Okay, my tip number 2 is shoot through glass. Don't avoid it, just do it. I've seen so many photographers that just walk on by because they see glass and they miss some very wonderful opportunities. Now, something to watch for is that you are going to get a little bit of reflection and glare. So my bonus tip here is wear dark clothing. Don't wear, past, paisleys and, prints and things that will actually reflect. Wear some nice dark clothing and put your lens against the glass and use your hand if you have to kind of cut out those reflections. But the closer you get against the glass, the less reflections that you're going to have. Another issue that we have is if you're shooting against glass, that it tends to have that green tint to it. I'll show you an example here. So this is a bear in the water. I'm shooting through glass. You can see there's some reflections. There's really kind of a green hazy tint throughout it. It just doesn't look too good. But, we've got post-processing things in front of us, whether it's Lightroom or Photoshop, or if you're using a third-party plugin, you can go in and change the color temperature. If you're shooting RAW, for example, what you can do is you can actually go in and change the settings. So if you had set it to cloudy, for instance, you can go back in and it's like processing your digital film actually in the digital darkroom. So you can change the temperature after the fact. And here's an example that I actually took into Color Effects Pro by Nik software. And I've, kind of manipulated the tint and the color just a bit so I can pull back some of that green, warm it up just a bit, and it looks a little bit more natural. I'm going to also show you a little trick that I do as well. Now I'm in Photoshop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a third-party plugin called MacFun Tonality Pro. And here's an image that was shot through glass as well. And it just is one of those throwaway images. It just doesn't look good. But what I did was I took it into MacFun's Tonality Pro, and I converted it to a beautiful sepia image. And this is so easy to do. So let me just show you an example here. We're going to go under the filter menu, I've got MacFun software, and I'll go into Tonality Pro. This is their black and white program. It's going to go ahead and load up. And what I like to do is I actually like to start with some presets. I'm just a preset person, so I'll start with some presets because it shows me, live and updated right away what I can get with some of these, little presets. It shows me what the software can actually do. So I'm going to pick one here. In fact, we'll go back to the top here because I like this one. It's called Coffee Toned. It's under the portrait listing here. So I'm going to go back in here, and then I can go over on the right-hand side, and you can see all these different things that I can manipulate and change. If I find that the highlights are a little bit too hot, I can take those down just a bit so I can bring out some more of that detail. If the shadows are too deep, I can click and drag that over to the right. You can see that under my tone section. I'm just clicking and dragging the shadow slider. The midtones I can bring up if I want to, or I can take them back down. Totally up to me what I want to do. And I can also change, let's see here, I'm going to take off the glow for a minute, kind of take away that kind of brightness there a bit. But under vignette, this is a key here, is I like to use sometimes vignettes to kind of pull the viewer's eye towards the image. So here we've got this bear, and I can manipulate it some more, but what I really wanted to show you was, this is an image that probably would have been a throwaway. Now I'm kind of created that kind of fine art look. In fact, I can go back in here. And let's just bring this up just a little bit. There we go. We got some nice backlighting happening there. Okay, so I wanted to show you that as just an example of how we can take an image that was shot through glass and maybe convert it to black and white. Tip number 3, shooting through wire. So this is a big challenge because when we're photographing at zoos, oftentimes some of the enclosures have wire. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can photograph the animal. So the key is to get them a few feet away from the wire and far enough from behind so that the animal's kind of in the middle and you can actually shoot through it and you can get some really nice, smooth backgrounds, especially if you're shooting wide open. I really recommend so that you can really kind of blur out the fencing behind it and you can get a really nice background there. Also use post-processing to hide the wire as well. So you can see in this image here, I've got 2 giraffes. They had wire fencing behind them and there's no way I could get rid of it other than going into post-processing. And in this case, I just masked out the background, dropped in, a dark background. And now you can't even tell if they were shot in Africa or at the zoo. Okay, here's a couple examples. So this bird here, you can see a slight pattern in the background, but it's not too distracting. In fact, it kind of looks nice. I like the colors, kind of almost emulates the kind of pattern of the wings, but it's soft enough that it's not that distracting. But what I did was I had a 70-200 lens and I shot it at f2.8. And that's what I tend to do most of the time when I'm at the zoo, is I'll shoot at that aperture setting because my subject is the main subject. I don't care about the background so much. I want this particular bird in focus. I want to get that nice background pushed away from me, so I'm shooting wide open. Okay, another way to do this is doing a little post-processing here. This is a tiger that was actually in mid-yawn, not a growl like it looks like. But what I did was I took this one into Nik Color Effects and also Vivesa 2. I was able to drop out the background and I used Silver Effects Pro, the black and white conversion program, and now wonderful contrast and that gesture of the mouth opening. So that's another way that you can remove distracting backgrounds. Okay, tip number 4. Besides the wire and the glass, there's also the backgrounds that can be very distracting. So one of the things is you always want to be aware of what's around or behind your subject. In fact, that's almost or as important as your subject itself. So when you're looking through the viewfinder, look all around, look at the corners, look what's, directly behind your subject, and be aware of any man-made structures. We want to take images at the zoo that looks like they've been out in the wild. There are several ways you can get around this. So one is you can zoom in, like this turtle here. I just zoomed in on his face. This is what I want my viewer to see. And also you can get rid of things post-process as well. Bonus tip is move your feet. Don't just stand in one position. If you're just standing there and waiting for things to happen, they may never happen. We just don't know. So try moving around just a little bit or come back later. the animal that might be sleeping or in a bad position may have moved by then. So here's an example of a meerkat family, and the background was kind of busy. So what I did was I used my telephoto lens and I zoomed in, got a nice crop here, and really focused on this family, this little meerkat with a mom and dad. So that's my subject, and I'm getting rid of any distracting backgrounds and making sure my viewer is seeing what I want them to see, and that's that really wonderful moment. With birds, oftentimes we get the clutter of leaves and palm leaves and things in the background. Again, shoot wide open and, make use of it. In this case, what I did was I took this background and I love the patterns. Again, it kind of emulates those feathers. So I made use of that. And I changed the bright green to kind of a Indian summer look. Actually, that was in Color Effects, a filter called Indian Summer. And then we've got the crest of this cattle egret that's matching the background. So there's lots of creative ways that you can get around those background distractions. Tip number 5, be patient. This is probably one of the most important things that you can learn shooting wildlife, whether it's at the zoo or out in Africa or Alaska or wherever you may be traveling to. You need to be patient with animals. It's not like a studio setting where we've got we can adjust for the lights, we can tell the animals to do things and they'll just, pose for us beautifully. We have to wait for that moment to happen. Try capturing gestures, by the way, beautiful moments that happen between two animals. Look for direct eye contact and leave your finger on the shutter. Be ready for it. If you have to, take a couple shots beforehand. Make sure everything looks good. You don't have any, blinky highlights and things that don't look right. Make sure you're looking through the viewfinder for those distracting backgrounds. Get your composition set up so that when something happens, like this owl will turn, maybe he comes around, he looks at you, you're ready to snap that picture and get it. And really important is keep both eyes open. How many of you folks close one of your eyes? If let's say you look through your viewfinder with your left eye, your right eye is maybe squinted closed, or it's your right eye that's open through your viewfinder and your left eye is closed. Keep both eyes open. This is something that you'll get in the habit of. This way, if something happens around you or, on the sides, you'll be ready for it. Just be really aware and listen to what's happening too around you. Just be very, very aware. I love that about photography. It gets us really centered and grounded, and it makes us really focus in and just kind of takes everything else and kind of silences all the background distractions and things that are going on in your life. And you can just really enjoy the beautiful moments spending time with these beautiful animals. So again, getting that nice eye contact. If you can, if there's a way to get down low, this is a little tiger cub that was coming towards me. And so what I did was I got down low. There's glass, of course, between me and him, but it's a much more interesting image than if I was standing up high and looking down. But I had to wait for this moment for this little guy to come around. Capturing these wonderful gestures, these moments between animals that are just precious. And this is something, again, I had to wait for. It didn't just happen right away. So I was with the giraffes and this little baby, and the mom just had a little precious moment there, and I was able to capture it. Something else to be aware of too, you could spend some time, this is a little red panda. I did spend some time with this guy and I waited. I took a bunch of images, but I was so glad I waited because this actually happened where I've got him holding a bamboo and his little eyes peeking through. A much more interesting image than, let's say, this one here, which is just kind of I call him a drive-by shoot, right? You just kind of, oh, he's cute, snap, and then move on. But what we want is those special moments that not everybody captures. So have fun and enjoy, get out there and take some wonderful images. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.